In this video, I'm going to provide you with a quick overview of some of the public and private transportation options that are available to you should you decide to visit Greece, and especially if you're considering doing a trip through the mainland. I have an entire video dedicated to renting a car that will come after this video, so I'm not going to go into too many details about that here. But nonetheless, there are different options for you, including bus, trains, ferries, and so on and so forth. And I thought it'd be beneficial to at least tell you a little bit about those options, even if it's, justifying my recommendation that you don't use them, so that you have the full gambit of information at your disposal to help you make, decisions for yourself. So first of all, I'd like to talk about Greece's bus system. It goes by the acronym KTEL, KTEL, and it is not good. There isn't a central website because, in fact, the KTEL bus system is, I think, 27 different regional bus systems that operate under the KTEL label. There isn't an integrated payment system. The schedules are difficult to find. And my understanding is that once you leave like the large cities like Athens and Thessaloniki, and you have to, catch a bus from like a small village or town, the schedule really is more of like a suggestion. It'll show up and depart when it wants, if it shows up and departs at all. So not the most reliable or trustworthy busing system. And the first hint that you will have that this transportation mode is just really problematic is just going onto Google Maps and trying to map a trip with buses from, let's say, Athens to, I don't know, Kalamata, and you'll see that there's nothing that really pops up, even though there is a bus system that actually does exist there. So yeah, every region is its own company. You have to go onto their individual website to figure out what their schedules are, where they operate, what cities they connect to. I mean, there isn't even an interactive map to know what the regions are, so it's literally just like a list of regions, which how are you supposed to know where they are geographically and what cities or main cities are within those regions and what they connect you to? It was just a mess. And like, girl, I mean, for a lot of these regional companies, you have to actually call them by phone. Like, what kind of attack and punishment is this, especially for generation texting, that you have to call them and ask them for their schedule, or to ask them, where they end up, going. So like, this whole busing system is like really due for like an overhaul. Like, Greece needs like Flickbus, 20 years ago, but it needs it like immediately. And honestly, like, as someone who has traveled like all over Europe, like, I'm honestly surprised that the European Union even allows such a broken system like this to operate within the European Union. And girl, Greece has been part of the European Union for a really long time, from like the early 80s. It was one of the first countries to join after, the United Kingdom and England joined in like the early 70s. Like, it has been part of the Union for a really long time. Where is Germany and the Netherlands and Belgium to go to the Greek Minister of, I don't know, Infrastructure or Transportation, and to tell them to get their act together? Because this should not be operating the way that it does for a country that is part of, and I know this is a politically charged term, but, a collection of first world countries. This did not give me first world country. And I say that because I'm Greek, so I'm being a little more liberal, if you will, with my critiques. But honestly, I almost actually wrote an email, like a sternly worded email, to whatever minister is responsible for public transportation in Greece and the European Union elected counterpart, to basically say this needs to be fixed. This is not acceptable. It isn't. And I was also really surprised because some of the other places where I was looking for information spoke somewhat highly about KTEL and the bus system, saying that it got you wherever you needed to go. And some, sources even said that it was easy to use. I'm pretty well traveled, and I'm also Greek, so I was able to even read like the Greek website, and I did not find it easy to use. I got so confused and I was so frustrated that I literally wanted to write like a sternly worded email. I mean, I didn't because I just forgot and got lazy, and as if it would make a difference. But yeah, I mean, it was really, trying to make sense of that mess of a system that, really obviously, compelled me to choose the car as the only option to actually make your way around, the mainland. I will say that, if you want to use the bus system, it could work if you want to do like a day trip out of a main city, like, Athens to maybe Delphi and back, Thessaloniki to Kavala, or maybe, somewhere, the names are escaping me right now. Edessa, for instance, if you will. But beyond using it for like a day trip, I really cannot come close to recommending that you rely on the bus system to get you around the country. But hey, listen, maybe I misunderstood everything, and maybe it is actually easy to use, and maybe I'm just really bad at all of this. I'm bad at traveling and bad at planning. That's a possibility. Maybe somehow I missed what everyone else was talking about. So by all means, please jump onto Google and type in KTEL, and if you can figure it out, great. And if not, at least you're having a bit of a laugh the way that I did. The train system in Greece largely operates on the eastern part of the country, and it's really only good for connecting you from Athens to Thessaloniki, with I think a stop in Larissa, which is a pretty a mid-sized city, if you will, but pretty big for Greek standards, in between the two cities. Besides that, it doesn't really get you anywhere else. It. I don't know what else I can really say about the train system other than, using it to get you, to a main city somewhere on the eastern seaboard, and then maybe, using the bus system as a substitute to get you from a main city to another destination. But I don't, unlike the rest of Europe, like, Italy is easy to sort of make fun of because, Trenitalia always goes on strike. But hey, at least with Trenitalia, you can get anywhere in Italy, like any small town, you can get there by train, and it's not an issue unless, again, the whole system sort of shuts down because they decide to go on strike. That is not the case in Greece. So Greece really does have some work that they need to do on their public infrastructure, because the western part of Greece is just, there's no train system there. And even in the eastern part, unless you're going to one or two of the main cities, you're going to have to rely on the KTEL bus system, which, good luck if you're a bit of a gambler. I guess it could work, but even then, that's only really going to get you probably to some of the main or small cities, and that's about it. And most of what you really want to see in Greece isn't necessarily those cities, it's the area around the city. The ferries are surprisingly reliable. Again, I didn't really use the ferry system. I only used it once, and that was to get me from Patras over to the mainland, when I wanted to do a day trip over to Nafpaktos, and that's because the bridge costs 14 euros one way, 28 euros to do a few hours in a city that's located on the mainland, which I would have actually done when I was leaving Patras to make my way to Lefkada, but I'm overall, I'm glad that I didn't do it that way, just because, Nafpaktos, I actually spent like a significant amount of time there, so I'm glad that I was able to spend, a full day there rather than stopping over for just like a quick hour or so. But nonetheless, Greece is an island country, and it does have, at least from what I understand from people that I know who have visited the islands, that it is a really well integrated, system that is, reliable. And based on the prices that I sort of saw when I was doing some research, when I was considering going to the islands, it looked like it was relatively affordable. I think from Athens to, Mykonos or Santorini, Mykonos was around 70 euros, and to Santorini was about 90 or 100, which isn't isn't awful considering, the plane costs around the same amount of money, and, you're traveling a pretty decent distance. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot to say about the ferries because, again, I didn't really use them, and the ferry that I used was really just like a 10-minute ferry ride over like a very small river or strait. It wasn't like a ferry that you would take from a port to go to the islands. I did an island hop, so not going to say much more about that. Planes are also an option, again, largely if you want to make your way around to the islands. You can take planes in Greece. But largely those trips are going to be from Athens to one of the bigger cities, Patras or Thessaloniki. A lot of cities do actually have airports, but it seems like those airports are like very regional, and a lot of the planes that land there are not from other places in Greece. Kalamata has a pretty big airport, but my understanding is that Kalamata's flights are not from other places in Greece. And again, if you kind of hop onto Google Flights or even, Google Maps or Aegean Airlines, you'll see that flying around Greece isn't really an option if you want to see anything outside of like the major cities. It might be easy to get there if you were outside of Greece, but unless you're planning on going to the islands or just going from one main city to another, planes aren't really going to get you there. And again, if you are planning on doing the islands, it's really up to you to decide if it's easier to fly there with a plane or if you'd like to take a ferry. Both seem feasible. Both seem to be around the same price. I guess it depends on the time of the departures as well as, the hassle you might experience at an airport, or I guess even the hassle at a port. But I know that for most people who visit the islands, they prefer the ferries. They find it to be easier, faster, more reliable, and less of a hassle overall.